Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Well, thank you for taking the time on what is no doubt a very busy period. Today, we have kind of put this webinar together just to kind of give some information, some ideas, some thoughts around how things are going to be changing for you and your monitoring requirements during this period of time. Just to introduce myself, my name is Mark Roberts. I'm the Technical Director. Looking at the list of attendees, I've spoken to many of you people before, so again, welcome. On today, I also have one of my senior engineers, Rob. Rob, good afternoon.
Hi, Mark. Hi, everyone. My name's Rob. I'm one of the senior network engineers at Prosperon, having started in a more support role, but now full-fledged member of the tech team, delivering consultancy, demos, all manner of things.
Rob, you've been on lockdown a little bit longer than us because you're based in Czech, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, it's been quite a change, to be honest. We sort of were in the first wave of quarantines, but everyone's caught up now. So, Mark, you're probably feeling it, and the rest of the people back in the UK, obviously staying at home, doing some remote working. It's an adjustment.
Yeah, it's an adjustment. I've got two kids that we're having to keep occupied. So yes, challenging times. So in terms of today, so what we want to make sure is that we hopefully give you some useful information, some relevant information that is going to be something you can take back, think, review, and apply to your monitoring definition. From our point of view, the change in the way that things have applied in such a short space of time, there's probably quite a few on catch up at the moment. And so what we are going to concentrate on today is the kind of thought processes that this change brings for you, the actions that you want to look at applying, and the approach of using your monitoring for this whole function. We're going to start off on a slide deck, so apologies for that, but I just want to set the scene. And the most important thing, people, please ask questions. So on your GoToMeeting panel, there is the capability of asking questions. Say this is something we want to give you as much information as possible. So if there are questions, things about how it may apply to your environment, please put them in the chat window. We'll be looking at answering them in bulk at the end of the presentation. But if things come along in the way, on that journey that is relevant, will also drop across to them as well. So just a little bit of background on Prosperon. If you're not familiar with us, thank you for joining if you are not. So we've been running for 15 years as a SolarWinds partner. We are a dedicated monitoring management solution provider for SolarWinds, for NetBrain, a few other vendor solutions. And a main part of our business is our professional services delivery. So helping customers like yourselves through the installation process, the design process, training, to make sure you have a well-rounded platform and it delivers what you need it to do. And as I say, at the moment, during this particular period of time, we feel it is more essential than ever for an organization to have clear visibility on how the environment is being used and the impact of how that infrastructure is delivering services to your users.
I mean, for us, Mark, we've gone down to having a full office, just having, let's say, a skeleton staff. So, if anything goes wrong, we need to be aware of it from home and alert anyone who is in the office to immediately act on it.
Exactly, and the fact that there is nobody in the office, that has practical implications for us. So who's looking after the servers and the network? So it's all being done remotely. And again, visibility, as you say, Rob, is critical in being able to respond in that way. So as I say, we provide a number of services to our customers, but this isn't what we're all here today. What we are wanting to do is to get across to you some of the information. So just to kind of kickstart things, just have a quick poll. What's going to be good for us is getting your feedback, understanding how you are actually being impacted by this virus crisis that we're in. What issues that you feel are the key ones here. So if you can just take the time to answer the question there, we'll have a look and see what's going on. So literally shock horror, all of the above, So what we've got here is kind of the visibility. Do you know what your issues are? Do you have the ability to capture that? Do you know what you should indeed be monitoring? And there's actually only a few people have indicated security, but as I say, most of those I would suggest are all wrapped up into the bigger question. But we have had a few people that have indicated that security is a key consideration as well. So, Rob, as I say, 53%, they're indicating that everything is a concern for them on that list at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's taken a lot of people by surprise. So yeah, it's not a shock for us, probably, Mark, that all of the above are a concern. Most important thing now is to act on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads in here is in terms of why do we monitor? Well, ordinarily, this is a critical aspect in an IT infrastructure. Your users should not be your monitoring solution. Yeah, your users phoning up and saying something's not working well is not the approach that should be taken. So the monitoring platform is there to inform, it's there to provide visibility. And this is a function that is, as I say, a critical thing when there are issues. We need understanding, we need to know where they are, when they occurred, what the impact of those are. And this is network infrastructure, this is your servers, your applications, your storage, cloud, your SaaS services. SaaS services are a big lifesaver. Customers that are on the session today that have a lot of their services delivered by a provider, you're in a stronger position. But the criticality of understanding, well, how's things working is more important again than ever before, because those SaaS providers are now under much bigger load. More and more people are now using them. If you're using remote web meetings, for example, I'm sure you've all looked in the main news, not just the tech news, that Teams and Zoom and all WebEx are having continued problems. We've been experiencing, Rob, we've been having calls this week ourselves where audio is being affected, and we can identify that that's down to Teams rather than anything else.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, fortunately, we have a variety of different services available to us, but yeah, there is a massive spike in load and people are being affected. The most important thing is that we monitor that, we record it, and baseline it.
And that's it. All about information. If we've got the information to know, then we have the information to make informed decisions. So from that point of view, that is why we monitor fundamentally, to capture that information to make those decisions, whether it's quick remediation on faults, whether it's the fact that we are learning from the trends to provide better service, or indeed the last one, how do we expand our capacity? And clearly, one of the topics we'll be looking at there is very critical for that. So what are the kind of key things that have changed? Well, the biggest one and the number one issue here is the fact that users are not in the office. They're not in those expensive places. Lots of rent and lots of technology is placed in them to service people working from their desks and whatever. Those users are now being placed outside of the organization, outside of the LAN. They are working from home. So there are significant challenges with regards to that. There are aspects around the ability to support those remote workers. It's about how the communication and resource consumption has changed. The third one there, are you even able to apply access? You're in a situation where us as a business, do we have enough laptops to give everyone? Are we asking people to use their own personal devices? And what are the challenges there? Well, we can't have people using personal devices to access sensitive data because we don't have control. We may have to change our security policies. Oh, go on, Rob.
Oh, sorry, Mark. I was saying that it does open a whole can of worms.
Yeah, exactly. And this isn't just people are suddenly taking their work home and working from home offices or from the kitchen table. This is about the equipment that they're using, the security profile that is relevant for those people, and the level of impact that could have within an organization. There may be requirements from above that says, look, it's important that we get everyone working. You need to relax your policies. Well, that's going to be an interesting thing over the course of this duration as to whether there are more attacks and more data leaks and those kind of things taking place because of the change that we are going through. And also, it's going to be interesting to see how this changes in the future. Are companies going to be more relaxed about people working from home fundamentally? So
I mean, for some customers, it's not very possible, is it, Mark? So you might have to look at increasing capacity. And then when it comes to increasing capacity, how do you estimate that? Well, fortunately, if you have a monitoring tool, you can do it more easily, but there are a lot of considerations.
Absolutely, and actually, let me throw that. If there's anyone on the call today that have specific challenges and experience specific questions along these lines, put it into the chat. We'll open the discussion and give us some background so we can get an understanding about actually, say, what you are experiencing in the real world. So, first thing, bottlenecks. I actually often use this in training. So if any of you have been on one of my training courses, when we do some trend analysis and we do alerting and those kind of things, and we do baselining, one of the things that I'll be discussing is, well, how do you know what your capacity looks like? How can you identify that? Obviously, what we're going to refer to in this day, today often is kind of VPN and application access. How do you know that your infrastructure can support the change? Internally, you've got your LAN and you've got 1 gig, you've got 10 gig networks flowing data around, all lovely. Now those people are accessing that remotely. Have your VPN tunnels been configured? Have you got the capacity in bandwidth, in the device support? If you're running things like remote desktop solution like Citrix, are your NetScalers of the right size and capability? Have you got all the routing in place to cope with everything in terms of the services that people now need to access? Maybe your firewall and VPN was configured to allow certain services to flow over it, but now you're having to expand that out to a lot more. So there's a whole bunch of change, there's a whole bunch of metrics that are critical to have visibility of at the moment. Because as this profile changes, where you're going maybe from an average of 50 users on your VPN to now 1,000, what does that look like? What does that impact translate to in your consumption and the way that your systems can service the level of performance that customers need, users need? So you can see here, how do we identify those? Well, there are important things. Do we know the capacities on the different layers? And this is an important concept. On the screen at the moment, we've got a graphic where we've kind of concentrated on the VPN and the firewall, but this is equally important with regards SaaS. Maybe there was a split function that internal users acted as an internal resource, external users had a SaaS solution, something along those lines. Is there a difference, as I say, in terms of how that consumption is occurring, how actions and applications are being triggered around? So conceptually, do you have that visibility? What do you need to do to give you that visibility? Well, we know from things like our health checks. Rob, you can you do quite a few of these. We often see customers don't have things like custom pollers in place.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world if you don't have them in place yet, but the earlier you act on it, the earlier you get them in place and start monitoring, the better.
Yeah, as I say, it's that whole thing with regards being able to get that visibility. So custom S&P pollers are an essential ingredient in that. We'll have a look at that in more detail in the demo. Replicating what your users are going to be experiencing. So whereas before maybe you were doing your monitoring from your internal network, now you need to think about doing more from external to again replicate how your users are going to be accessing, and that so you can see the performance of that web application. You can see the response times from your systems as they would experience, not just from your internal LAN. How do you monitor SaaS? Well, you don't necessarily have all of the visibility with SaaS because it's someone else's platform, but there are the user experience layers. There are possibly and usually APIs that allow you to go and collect statistical data that are going to give you better insight. So it's looking at each of your services, your application delivery functions, your hardware, and identifying what are your key metrics. What are the data values that, if you have visibility, are going to give you a better picture at those answers. And at the bottom there, you can see log data should not be underestimated. Absolutely. We're always big advocates of making sure that people are collecting log data, whether that's via syslog, S&P traps, files. That is essential because they have huge amounts of data in them. So from a VPN point of view, if you see that you've got faults coming through on your VPN tunneling, log data is going to tell you, oh, a whole bunch of people are using the wrong certificate or the wrong phase 2 settings. That data immediately gives you the answers as to root cause.
It's not like back in the office, is it, Mark, where someone could quickly pop their head around the corner and say, oh, is this working? Or maybe, one service is down, but the rest of your services are available. If there's an issue with your firewall, at this point, quite likely it means people stop working altogether. So you need to be very reactive.
Yeah, and the complexity of IT now is not just a siloed monolithic platform. It's reliant on so much in that chain. On this graphic that we had a moment ago, we are going through maybe 5, 6, a dozen or more network devices with a load balancer and a server farm behind it. There's a whole bunch of layers from the storage through the virtualization, the server, the application, the network layer that can all impact performance. And you need to get those visibilities in there to understand and have a good understanding. And this is why baselining is important. What is a good number? What is a bad number? Well, you could look at a percentage value on a interface utilization and say, well, anything over 90% is a bad number. Yeah, it's obvious. But if you looked at the number of sessions that are currently running through your system, the number of requests a second, the number of pull values in the size of your cache, what are the good numbers? Well, if you have a baseline, you know what the norm looks like, you know what the norm is good and it behaves well. When you have changes and bad numbers and bad performance comes in, you have the ability to correlate those through to each other. And you can see that actually when we hit a value of 1500 VPN tunnels, that's when we start having high CPU and memory utilization on the device, and everyone starts experiencing poor performance. And we can see that because our user experience checks are confirming that to us in the first place. So it's getting all of this data together, putting it into a place where you can identify and you put the appropriate thresholds and the correlated thresholds around everything. And we'll see in the session how PerfStack is really great at providing that capability to us. And then the last thing in the slide deck is this final thing, putting it all together, bringing this into a focused dashboard where we've identified the data metrics, we've identified the best method of display. You can see on the graphic, and you'll see this page in a moment, what is something that we want to put a value out on, a single value. How do we chart that? How do we look at the trends? Have we got interactive search criteria that allow us to look at this? So you'll see on the right-hand side, we've got a map. Is that useful to get information across? As human beings, we can consume information in different ways, and different information is relevant for different types of display. So it's important to get that in place. And we also need to make sure that we focus this to our audience. If this is a screen focused towards the network, then that's great for the network team. But will the application team benefit from this? Well, yes, they will, but they need their data being displayed for them and focused towards the metrics which are relevant during say these times of crisis. And so thinking through the metrics, thinking through how you display that, thinking through how you filter that and tune that to the audiences, as I say, is a very important aspect around everything you're going to be doing now. Okay, so before we move on to the demo, we've just got one more poll here. As you can see, the question is, have you made any adjustments to your monitoring and your management based on what has happened so far? Okay, so got a few votes coming. Oh, it's changing rapidly in front of my eyes as the votes come in. Okay, so
pretty good split.
Yeah, I say that's interesting. Good to see. Yep. So we've got a lot of people that have already applied. So hopefully you're here just to kind of get some fine tuning information, perhaps compared to what we're kind of saying here. Yep. And there's a few people that are here to get this information. So okay, that's fantastic. Hopefully we can help everyone out today. So Rob, I'm just going to give you presentation rights. So if you would like to take over, what we're now going to do, everyone, is just hand over to Rob, who's going to take you through a bit of a demonstration and some of the practical aspects around what we've just discussed.
Okay, so what we're looking at the moment is the SolarWinds online demo. I'm going to be using this to demonstrate the capabilities of monitoring your firewalls in particular, because I mean, when it comes to remote working, they're the ones you're going to need to know about in great detail. So coming to the SolarWinds online demo, I'm going to be going over to our settings and manage nodes. I'm going to pick out an ASA, for example, that they've got monitored. Now, what we're going to see on the ASA is something that SolarWinds called Network Insight. So they've got some really good detailed metrics for VPN. If we go to our Cisco here, and let's scroll down and choose East Firewall B. Now, after they populated this node, essentially all they needed to do was go to list resources on this device and just say, yep, I'd like to get some ASA details out of that. So beyond the normal CPU monitoring, beyond the normal memory or interface monitoring, you've got an additional monitor for ASAs, which is going to give you site-to-site VPN and remote access VPN. So with users connecting back to your office from working from home, you're going to need to know a lot about their activities, what they're doing, how much data they're using, when did they start a session, so on. That's what this is going to give you. So hurrah if you've got ASA. Fortunately, though, it's also applicable to Palo Alto. I'll come to that immediately afterwards. Of course, if you've gone with Checkpoint, for example, like us, or maybe some other vendor, we can also review what we can get out using custom polling, which we mentioned earlier. Let's go over to our remote access VPN. So I absolutely love this display. It came in fairly soon after they moved the transition over to this new GUI that started in version 12. That's the point. Make sure that you upgrade everyone. This is a great time to start leveraging these additional benefits from the later versions.
Yeah, I was just going to say about that, Rob. What you're showing here is what SolarWinds are calling the network insights. So anyone that's had SAM and they're used to App Insight, this is the network equivalent. So currently this supports Cisco ASA and Palo Alto's. So you need to make sure you are running current releases to get that capability.
I'm now going to switch over to another firewall. It seems that B did not have any user data on it for the time being, but let's take a look at A, which I'm sure has some users. And there we go. So after monitoring an ASA, this is the sort of information that's going to be really critical to you. And fortunately, it didn't involve a lot of work to get it going. SolarWinds has taken that burden off of you. So I've just come to my remote access VPN, and immediately you're going to start seeing users. Yeah, you're going to start seeing data downloaded and uploaded. You're going to see how long they've been connected. I mean, everyone, I'm sure, trusts their employees and trusts they're going to be working. This is a way that they can validate that or check, capacity. Let's say that you can only service a certain number of users, or maybe you haven't expected this sudden increase in usage of VPN. This data is really, really going to help you. Of course, it doesn't end here with just this static table. Of course, we can change things around. You can see we've got a filter up here. So we're looking at start date. But let's say I want to look at data downloaded. I mean, let's say we're worried about our internet usage or connection to the office. Well, I want to see, okay, how much data are we actually consuming here? I'm going to look at data downloaded, descending, and there you go. I can see that this user, for example, has downloaded 150 meg of data. Important statistics. In a moment, I'll also show you how this can be represented in a chart. So it's not just what we're looking at this point in time. We can look at these statistics from a historical perspective. I'll also show you Palo Alto, which is going to have a very similar GUI. So we'll go to Settings, Manage Nodes. Let's imagine for a second that we have Palo Alto, for example. Let's choose this one. Well, I love that. This is really easy to navigate, very quick, very responsive. So you can see I've come to the node details page for a particular Palo Alto. Hover over on the left. Immediately obvious, here's my Global Protect VPN. So that'll be the client that they're using to connect to the Palo Alto. And here we go. I can start to see users. There's Diana, there's Rose, not personally acquainted, but good to see their names there. And I can see session details, even down to when they disconnected. So that's another useful thing. What times my users connected? If I start having to say to people, look, we can't meet the level of users accessing simultaneously. Maybe I need to adjust working times. Maybe I need to put some sort of restrictions in place. I can base this off of the number of people connecting at a specific time. I can use this time data to start adjusting. And you can see where they're connecting from, for example, as well.
These network insights have just been fantastic, because it literally, you just provide the credentials and bang, all of this data comes straight in. We've had a question from Steve. He's indicated that getting the right MIBs and the pollers for firewalls is sometimes a problem. I have actually answered on the chat, but this isn't it, Rob? This is custom polling is a troublesome area, let's say.
Yeah, I'd say so. Often it's just down to confidence, though. Some people maybe don't feel confident enough to put them in place. It is something that needs to be addressed, and we'll go over that in a second, actually. I would say first port of call, though, Thwack, start making use of Thwack, because what you can do, product forums, NPM, because custom polling is going to be our network performance monitor. If you're not confident to set up these custom pollers, if you don't know your IDs, you don't really know how to set these up, don't worry. SolarWinds is a really widely shared platform, a lot of users, and people are going to help out. What I've done is I've come to my NPM forum, and I'm going to go to something called the Content Exchange here. And what the Content Exchange is people have set up these custom pollers, and they've said, look, rest of the world, why don't you make use of them as well? So for us, for example, we've done some work with our checkpoint I mentioned earlier, where we've got custom pollers in place. Some of that we could have gone to Thwack and actually downloaded ready set up packages that would let us do it. I think that's made it a lot easier, Mark.
Yeah, and as you say, the challenge here is finding the OIDs. It's knowing what metrics are useful. I think you're going to show in a moment the UNDP utility, and we're not going to be going through that in too much detail, but there are thousands and thousands, if not, well, there are millions and millions of entries in there, and it can be painful to find the right one. So as Rob says, go to Thwack. You can download in the Contents Exchange ones that have been shared, and you can import them. If you have devices that you're not sure what values to collect, raise a support case, give us a reach out, we can give you some guidance. In fact, we may be able to just provide you the information that you need for your devices, because we have an extensive library. So there are options for you.
I mean, if you've gone our route and not decided to make it easier for yourselves, and maybe not gone with a Palo Alto or an ASA, here's how you do it. So at the moment, we're looking at our SolarWinds application server. I've created some shortcuts here, but really the best way to find this custom polder tool is to go to Start, and we're looking at SolarWinds Orion. If we just expand out that Start menu category, scroll all the way down, it's this universal device polder tool here. So let's open that up. I'll show you what it looks like. Most important thing is don't be intimidated. As we mentioned earlier, Thwack's there to help out. We're here to help out. And often the bulk of the work has been taken off your hands because people have created these packages. You can see here on the left, we've got the find pollers. These are just, think of these like instruction books for SolarWinds on what to ask these devices. SolarWinds is reaching out to these and giving it, they're trying to get data from specific OIDs. If we take a look at our checkpoint VPN category, for example, you can see this poller here, and I'm going to edit that in a second. This poller here is looking at a specific OID. It's got a name that maybe isn't so user-friendly, but the description is perfectly user-friendly. So we're looking at tunnels here. We're keeping historical data, because of course, if we want to do effective baselining, if we want to come back in a certain amount of time and look back at our statistics, this is going to be absolutely critical. Enabled, well, certainly in these times we do want it enabled, we do want it polling. There's our group, our checkpoint VPN, so that people know where to find it. And you can see here that we've got it assigned. So you can assign it from this tool, like so. Or if I switch back to our web console, and this time we're going to be using our SolarWinds environment. So let's go to our Manage Node screen. there's our checkpoint firewall. Give it a tick. And we are looking at assigning pollers. If you come to this screen, you can see there's our checkpoint VPN. Expand that out, and there it is. Number of ESP tunnels. So it's not so scary when you really get down to it. I mean, what we just showed you there was maybe a couple of minutes of the different views to getting to this stage. But use FLAC. Leverage the packages that other people have created. Ask for help. But it's not so intimidating as maybe it first seemed. After getting all of those. Sorry, Mark, go on.
No, I was just going to say, just on that, it can be intimidating because there is that whole thing about, I don't know what I want to monitor. So one of the tips that we give is log on to the management interface of the device. Log on, in our case, as we did a long time ago, to the Checkpoint web interface. Have a look and see what your vendor is displaying on its kind of dashboard. That is probably what you're going to want to replicate in the custom folder. If they are showing that information on the dashboard, they are providing a MIB OID value that allows you to collect that information. The number of sessions for a firewall, the number of IPS triggers that have been gone through, all of these kind of metrics, they are saying to you, this is useful based on our functionality. Replicate that in your own environment. So if you can just, before I begin my section, can you just click on the Pros Firewall, and you can see that we've got a dedicated page for this. So just go down to the node details page, Rob. Fantastic. So here is an example of the fact that we are monitoring a checkpoint firewall, which is different from a Cisco switch, which is different from an ESX host. So we've created a specific page layout for this device type because we know that there are specific data metrics which are relevant here. You can see that we've got our chart for our number of VPN tunnels, we've got encrypted packet rates, we've got all of the kind of things, as I say, which are absolutely necessary to gain visibility. All right, thanks for that, Rob.
No worries. But I would say definitely speak to the relevant parties. I mean, what I've found, I'm not sure if this experience is the same for you, Mark, the monitoring team might not necessarily be the network team, or might not necessarily be the application team. The person who manages a firewall or who manages a switch isn't necessarily the one who's populating it into SolarWinds. So talk to the experts. If you've got a dedicated security team who are looking after these firewalls, ask them, what information do you need? What information will be most beneficial to us? And maybe you might have this individual might have some experience in the past of populating this data into a monitoring tool.
Yeah. If you are lucky enough to be a monitoring engineer, I consider myself to be lucky. Then I need to leverage that knowledge. Yeah, I don't know every piece of tech that's out there. I need to ask those questions and provide them a function for them. And so, as I say, if you're an all-in-one, if you're managing the infrastructure and providing monitoring, then ask yourself those questions, but go through that process. Excellent. All right, thank you very much for that, Rob. So we're now going to have a look at a little bit of baselining. So as I indicated in the slide deck, being in a position where you know what the normal looks like is going to allow you to have an understanding. So what we're going to do here, and Rob, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to drive, save us moving around and showing different screens. So what I'm going to ask you to do, Rob, is just kind of put a interactive dashboard together. And the premise behind this is the fact that I've started to put a range of our metrics together. So I've got the data being collected now, and now I want to start bringing this into a view. This may be because I want to embed it in a dashboard. This may be because I'm in a reactive situation and I want to get some answers. So if you can kind of just put a sample together for obviously the topic in hand and concentrate it on our firewall, the VPNs, the traffic, the compute load that may be experiencing from there. And what you'll see here as Rob kind of navigates this through, and this is great for me, I'm just watching someone else drive, is that he looked for the device. Yeah, we know that our VPN concentrator is our checkpoint firewall. And so he added that device. And the first thing you actually did there, which is interesting, is you can you just go on to that? I think just for speed, people may have missed it. So when no, it's okay. Just on the node, if you hover over the node, yeah. So you see the little kind of icon there. He just literally added the node, clicked on that button, and now all of the related objects, the interfaces on that device, any volumes that are being monitored on it, any members of groups that device is in, you can see there that automatically they come across. So it's really very quick to kind of start building this up. Okay, thanks for that, Rob.
No problem.
So as he's going through, you can see the process. He's looking at the metrics. Yeah, he's seeing that we have, when we click on, in this case, a node, that a whole bunch of metrics related to that node come through. So the fact that we are doing NetFlow data collection from that device, that we have interfaces on there, that device has data values which are important to us. He's identifying them and navigating through the category structure. He could have done a search, maybe did a search for connection, and dragging and dropping that onto the chart structure on the right-hand side. The speed of which you can do this, as you can see, is very efficient. Clearly, Rob knows what he's doing. He's been doing this a long time, very adept. You're going to take possibly a little bit longer, but what you can see is the data metrics, you drag and drop them on the right-hand side, whether you layer them on existing charts or whether you are adding them as new. So when you, can you just find another metric and just slowly drag it off and hold it over that right-hand side?
Yeah. So we'll tell you what, let me just remove our accepted packets. So this section here, I wanted to be all regarding packets. So what I'll do, I'll go back onto our firewall. I know these packet stats are underneath checkpoints. There's my accepted packets. I can just grab this metric, drag it across, and you see I've got different options here. You know, which section, which chart do I want to layer it on, or which section do I want to put it in between? I want it to be part of this packets chart, so I'll just drop, and there you go. So now I've saved a whole lot of real estate.
Okay, fantastic. So I'd say that as a capability, just as I say, is really quick and easy. And what I'm looking at here is the trends. I'm looking at the history and I'm comparing it to different points in time. So Rob, let me know when you're finished with the metrics that you want to get on the display.
I think we're ready.
Yeah, you happy with that? Okay. Yeah. Great. So you've immediately gone to the top because this is a baseline analysis. Yeah, I want to have a look at how this works over an extended period. So yeah, do you want to change that to something that's going to give us that kind of insight?
Well, I can't speak for you, Mark. My quarantine began quite early in March, but I think we'll go a month back, shall we?
Which year, Rob? Are we talking about Corona here?
I'm not allowed back in the office, unfortunately, guys.
That's a whole different country. Okay, so you've changed the time frame. So you're looking at this over a 30-odd day period. And what we can see are different values. So we've got some trend analysis. We can see probably, yeah, I can certainly on that one you're hovering over now, that we have weekends being displayed. So there's activity on VPN tunnels at weekends. You can hover over and you can see how many connections were made, how many firewall VPN tunnels were running at that time, the traffic that's been consumed. So having this as a stack topology chart gives you that ability to correlate data metrics across what possibly are disparate devices, different metrics, to see the impact that they have on each other. Maybe if I have a high number of connections, does that impact the amount of CPU and memory that is consumed, the amount of traffic that's generated? Well, actually, Rob, that's interesting. What I'm seeing there is when we all started working from home, the office bandwidth utilization has shrunk significantly.
Yeah, making some savings there on our internet usage. It does make a big difference.
Yeah, well,
if you start doing this, guys, in your own environment, you would probably do the same thing.
Sorry, can I hover over one of those peaks, Rob, on the pink chart? So on the right-hand side, now in black, you can see the numbers. We can see that at 356, high utilization. Well, that could have been somebody doing a download. That could have been that cat video that have been shared around the office. That's now not happening. We confirmed, actually, this is great for me because I know that all of our VPN tunnels are configured for split routing. So we're not sending all of the traffic back to our office and then out again. We've got local breakouts in place. Okay, fantastic. That's really good. So if you could do me a favor and just save that, please.
Oh, of course. So we save the project up here, guys. And I'm going to call this our baseline analysis for firewall.
Okay. All right. So the reason why I've asked you to save it is because I've gone through this process and I want to utilize this continuously in future. And actually what I'm going to ask you to do is just show how we can embed that in your summary dashboard display, which you, I think, are going to go do now.
So in light of us all working from home, what we have done in the office, or out of the office as the case may be, is create a remote working dashboard. I'm just going to flick tabs over to it now. So you can see this is the one that we've all pitched in and created. So you can see we've got some familiar charts down here. I'll explain all the other resources, guys, but immediately you're going to start recognizing some of this. This is based off of that performance analysis GUI that you saw a moment ago. In fact, what I can do is take the project we were just working on. If I go to customize page and then my page settings, before I go any further, I'm going to add that baseline project. Here we go. So I have found that in my library. I'm giving it a tick, selected resource, and now I can add it. There's my baseline analysis firewall. I'm going to stick that third one down. Excellent. Let's go done. And you can see how quick that was. So I've just set up a new project. I want to see a month's worth of data, and I want to be able to correlate those metrics with others. Really quick and easy way to do it. And now I've put it on my remote working dashboard. You can see same function as before. I can hover over and it immediately breaks out those metrics and shows them side by side. Going way back in time.
I think everyone acknowledges the capability of the Orion Web Interface. It's very clean, it's very elegant, it's very powerful, and the continual improvements that they bring in, these performance stack charts, and the capabilities of having these layered up in one way you can interact and hover over them, as say for me, is just so immensely powerful.
Absolutely. If I go on to explain a bit more about the dashboard then, and how we went about setting up, not just conceptually, but a bit of practical examples as well. I mean, the first thing that I did was think, what do we need to know about? What are the metrics that are going to really jump out at me that I'm going to want to know instantly? Well, you can see over here on the left, remote users. I mean, this is just plain simple. The most obvious thing you want to know about. How many people are connecting via VPN? Another thing you're going to notice, which adds a bit of color to the dashboard, and given the situation we're in with the pandemic we're facing, we've got a map here showing the breakout across Europe. This is provided by Johns Hopkins University, and in fact, if you were to go to their webpage and take a look at this map, what they provide on that page under the FAQs is a really useful iframe. So this resource that we're looking at on the remote working dashboard, it's just a custom HTML resource. You can add the same thing in your own environment. I'll show you where in the library to find it. As soon as you've got a custom HTML resource added to your page, you can just put this data here. It's the iframe that Johns Hopkins provide. No additional work required by you. Just copy, paste, submit. Well, give it a nice title and give credit, of course. And there we go. Of course, it doesn't have to be a map showing the crisis we're facing at the moment. It could be any sort of data that would be relevant to you based on what you're facing at that time. Could be, well, it wouldn't even necessarily need to be a disaster. I mean, let's imagine that it's a particularly hot summer, and you've got data centers across the country. Where am I going to be seeing an increase in usage for cooling in my data centers? It's all manner of things that you can display on here. Just to quickly show you though, guys, if I customize my page, I'm now going to use a different way to add a widget See, again, SolarWinds' new flashy customization comes into play where I go add widgets. I'm looking at HTML, custom HTML, drag and drop, and then I can edit. So I could do the same thing all over again if I needed to. Let's remove that.
Excellent. And this is something which we kind of demonstrate a lot, is turning Orion's web interface into that portal, bringing not just data that Orion is collecting, but also being able to embed external data. Now, clearly, in terms of what you've done there, Rob, is just kind of made it relevant for what's going on. Is this useful? Maybe, maybe not. But certainly there are lots of other examples of bringing external data in here. It may be just links to your ITSM platform. It may be your tickets from your service desk platform. These are all useful sources of information.
Absolutely, yeah. So going around the dashboard and seeing what else we've got displayed on here, you can see we've got the remote working firewall along with its status. Beneath that, an application health overview. I mean, if you're working from home, you want to make sure, well, and the rest of the office is as well, you want to make sure that the services you're providing, or at least the services that maybe you're relying on internally, that they're all functioning. So having something like this is going to be really useful on dashboard. Tying in with what we were saying earlier about different teams needing different data, maybe this wouldn't be relevant to a network team. You're going to have to make your own judgment call there. I mean, for us, we're a tightly knit team. We all share responsibilities, and there's no person who would stake a claim purely to applications. We're all pitching in, so it's important to us. But network team, remote working dashboard, maybe they wouldn't want to see that, or maybe they'd want it cut down so that only shows their services.
And Rob, don't we want to bring the network team and the applications and the system teams all together and be one friendly family anyway? Isn't that what we want to encourage? Exactly. So sharing information across those teams is great.
You can see over here on the right, which ties in very nicely with the static count that we got on the left here, is remote users over the last 24 hours. No surprise, in the middle of the night, we didn't have any users. Of course, around 8 o'clock, did start to climb again. So you can see there's the name of our custom poller. Again, don't be frightened, guys. We've just added this to a custom chart, and we're able to display this data over 24 hours. If we wanted to, we could display that over the last month. Probably what you'd see is that around time of the quarantine, it immediately shot up, but before that time, it would have been fairly low. Scrolling down, you can see we've got an all alerts resource here, active alerts, showing all unacknowledged. This is another important one, guys. SolarWinds is a proactive tool. It's going to let you know when issues occur, and just displaying the issues on the remote working dashboard is going to be very important. Who's actually dealing with these alerts? Do we need to be reacting to certain things or prioritizing others? This resource is going to be really critical to you.
Rob, sorry to interrupt you. Can somebody's just reported they've lost audio. If you have lost audio, can you just put into the kind of chat window? Otherwise, we'll assume it may be just being isolated, but actually is typical of what we're experiencing at the moment. You have that situation where GoToMeeting are struggling to service everybody. So, okay, sorry, Rob.
No problem. No, these are uncertain times, so making sure that these services are monitored, it's very important. Because what happened just there, someone actually had to speak up and say, look, this isn't working for me. The advantage of having a monitoring tool in like SolarWinds is that you can preempt that. I mean, let's say that there was an alert here, or maybe an application down here. If we were aware of that from this dashboard, we could do something about it before people started calling and saying, look, nothing's working for me.
So just to time what you're showing on the screen a second there, you can see in the domain logins. So we had a question come through from Haya. I'm not sure if I pronounced that, so apologies if I haven't, about how to show remote users. So what we are demonstrating here is our complete Orion platform. So we're obviously lucky that we have all of the modules for Orion. And what you can see on the left-hand side, Rob, you've put a widget together that's showing all of the users that have logged in today that are on the VPN pool IPs. Yeah. So
on
we
the
can
domain.
see. Great.
Yeah, I mean, as Mark said, that is the advantage of leveraging a full suite of the Orion platform. What I've tried to do with this remote working dashboard is really leverage the benefits of each individual module. So you can see here, we've got UDT being leveraged because we need to know about users. We need to know when they're logging on. That's what this is providing through UDT. I can see my user, I can see where they're connecting from, and I can see what time they actually logged on. This one here, for example, this is, sorry, Mark, go on.
Sorry, so that data is coming from the user device tracker module, and you're using the custom query widget I see there to allow us to interactively search, because clearly there could be hundreds, there could be thousands of names in here, and maybe I want to go and have a look and see if Bob Smith has been able to log in because he's reported that he's got issues.
Yes, I mean, we're fortunate enough to have a tight company, but in cases where we have hundreds or thousands of users authenticating in a very short time span, we will absolutely need a search option here. Going down, you can see we've made use of IPAM. So here we've got our VPN user pool subnet utilization. Now we've actually started monitoring, or we have been monitoring our VPN user pool through IPAM, and we can see what sort of IP usage we're getting out of that. Again, we've got plenty of capacity, fortunately for ourselves, but let's say that a company had only provisioned a certain number of IPs for VPN usage. If suddenly we vastly exceed that with a number of users all trying to jump on there at the same time, SolarWinds going to let you know, and it'll give you the opportunity to maybe, increase the scope, create new scopes. Power's in your hands.
Well, and this is exactly that. This is that information to say, well, actually, one of the configuration key items behind supporting remote workers is we have there an IP pool for VPN dial-up users of a certain size. If we hadn't adjusted that to cope with the additional numbers, then they wouldn't be connecting.
That's right.
Rob, I'm really sorry. We're kind of starting to run out of time. I'm going to be aware of keeping to our end time of 2 o'clock. So if it's okay, we'll go on to some questions.
Of course, yeah.
So let's have a look. We've had a question from Ren regarding have done any integration to Mitel 3000 systems. He says we've got SNMP set up and syslog, but not getting much out of it. Okay, so anything you want to come jump in there with, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely seen Mitel and have set up pollers for it. I would say easiest way, and the first step that I usually go to whenever I'm dealing with a vendor that I'm familiar with or maybe unfamiliar with, go to the WAC, use the content exchange, search for the vendor name. Chances are you'll find something there. If not, next stage, usually go to the vendor directly or go to the team that's responsible for it in your environment. They're going to have some insight. If not, then online, the company's going to have data sheets. They're going to present their OIDs in most cases. So that's one of the easiest ways. So with Mitel, for example, you go to their website, check their data sheets, or check documentation, or maybe even just do a quick Google. Mitel, SNMP, custom pollers, and then the metric you want to get out of them.
Yeah. I'd say there's certainly that power of Googling. So as Rob says, the make, the model, SNMP, OID, polling, they're all going to be things. But as I said before, one of the big things for me, log into the Mitel management interface, have a look at their dashboards, identify the metrics, have an understanding from your SME, what does that device do? What does that platform do? Okay, what metrics are useful? How many registered phones there are? How many SIP connections that are running if you're using SIP? What the bandwidth utilization is. Bring all of that into a single display for your Mitel. But we'll have a look at Renda supporting you and see if we can give you some guidance. So if you can reach out to us after this, then we can give you some specific guidance back. A question from Shane. Use BGP on their Cisco ASAs. They've noticed the Cisco ASA MIBs don't have the standard OIDs for monitoring BGP peers or number of routes. Do we know a way of doing this? Rob, this should be fixed in the, or not fixed, but this should be a solution in the latest releases with regards to Network Insight. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I would say, double check the version you're currently on. Chances are maybe not on the latest. If not, upgrade. SolarWinds is constantly working on any issues, and also adding features. If you come to product forums and go to NPM, you can take a look at what we're currently working on. You can also take a look at the release notes for different versions. Check to see if your issue has been fixed in that. They will usually provide KB references for issues that people have made them aware of. And in their release notes, they'll say, here are all the changes we've made. Mark, are you with me?
Sorry, I was on mute. So yeah, with regards to that Network Insight for ASAs, that should deal with it. There is also a setting in the edit properties of the node to change the Cisco MIB that is used. So that may need to be overridden. It shouldn't need to be. By default, it should work. But Shane, I suggest maybe we have a support session and have a look and see what's going on with that, because it should be automatic. We have a question here.
Sorry, Mark.
You see one? So I see another one from Haya. How to bring custom polar metrics here.
Yes,
so they're the
at my own as well. Yeah, it's one thing to start polling those metrics, isn't it, Mark? But it's quite another to start presenting that data. I think actually one of the things that maybe people would feel comfortable about is actually saying, okay, here's a custom polar, here's the node that it should be assigned to, but then they're lost on how to show that in the web console. It's an entirely separate process, and it needs a bit of explanation.
So, just from a time point of view, Rob, sorry, if you just click on, because one of the things I like about these perf stack, if you can click on the open in perf stack option there. Yeah. No, in your that's it. Yeah.
In the resource itself, so you've got that option as well, guys, not just through the menu.
So this is going to load up exactly what we're seeing in the page, and so yeah, if you can just click on the node. So what you should see, Haya, again, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right, is that the category names that you have defined in the Universal Device Polar will get listed in your metric category structure, and now you can immediately access them.
Probably as our audience to be painfully aware of, Mark. Now that they've seen it so many times, it's our CPV current ESP SASIN. That's our users connected. This maps exactly to the custom polar name that we set up in that Universal Device Polar tool we were looking at earlier.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's great. Well,
yeah, and then if you go back to your summary page, and okay, so Haya's got a follow-up question. You tried that in 12.3? Yes, this was something that there was some missing features in the older versions. So yeah, I suggest that you upgrade, and you will definitely get access to that functionality. PerfStack had not caught up with all of the data metrics at that point. Yeah. And so just finally on that chart, just seeing that from that point of view, you've got the ability to create a custom chart and reference that as well. So there's a little bit more involved in that, just editing and defining that entry. Okay, I think we've got all of the questions answered. I'm just having a review. Okay, so I think there was that reference to the remote users. I think, if we've answered that in being able to use the user device tracker data, it's showing names out. Not yes, actually, it's a good follow-up, Edwin. So GDPR, there are things to be aware of in capturing user information. So where a user is logged in to a machine, that is potentially sensitive data. From everything that we've been researched and everything we've been told, as long as your company policy allows that data to be collected from a genuine monitoring point of view, that's okay. What you need to do is make sure you have that data securely recorded. In the DAC region, that's a bigger issue because there are more advanced laws, and we have customers in those regions where user device tracker, user logging is not allowed. Okay, so we at the top of the hour. Rob, thank you very much. That's been really useful to the audience. Again, I really hope that's been useful for you today to get something from this. If you do have any other follow-up questions, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help and answer. So thank you, and everyone have a good day.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Thanks for everyone who joined.